Hello, I'm Danny the Teach. This is Beauty Manifested. This is a channel for storytelling, so it would make sense for you to subscribe, because if you just hop in and hear one part of the story, it may not make sense. With that being said, don't leave any mean comments, because if you haven't heard the entire story, this might not make sense. So this is just one little piece. So for today, another day, another date, of course. So I just came from a date, and of course I have some thoughts. This guy... So I knew, honestly, like a couple minutes into the date that we were not going to be going on a second date. He just, mostly just because, like, the vibes was off. The vibes were off, and I'm just getting more into, like, wanting to date people who I just, like, really, really click with. Especially because I've done so much work to, like, heal and grow that I feel like I definitely know, like, what I like. And so... this guy, like, as soon as we got on the date, and he's a cool guy and everything, like, don't get me wrong, but, like, it just wasn't gonna be it. Even, like, even the lead up to the date, like, it just wasn't it. So I knew within a couple minutes that we were not gonna be going on a second date. But this guy is, like, pretty cool and interesting. He's definitely an intellectual. He's kind of a nerd, and, like, I'm very multifaceted. I can get along with anybody. I'm a people person. So the first few minutes of the date were, like, a little bit awkward. But then we kind of got into a vibe, and we ended up having, like, some really cool intellectual conversations. The first few minutes of the date were so awkward. Well, one, because he was like, oh, I don't know what you like to eat, so you pick the restaurant. And I know guys like this. So I was like, okay, like, whatever, fine, I'll pick the restaurant. And I told him, I was like, well, you know, I don't know, because one, I know he's, like, trained as a doctor, but he's an immigrant, and I just don't know, like, what his income is. And so I didn't really want to pick the date, but I was like, I don't want you to judge me based on what I pick. And he's like, no, I'm giving you the option to pick, like, pick whatever you want. So I was like, okay, fine. So I picked my favorite brunch buffet, and it's not super expensive, but it's not cheap either. So, like, I just chose what I wanted to choose, because that's what he told me to do. So then we go to the restaurant, and he's never been here before, even though it's at the mall. So I was like, okay. And then he was running a little late, and then he couldn't find it. And I was, like, giving him directions. And it was just, like, I don't know. It was just not really, like, the container that I would like for a man that I want to marry to hold. I felt like I was holding the container. So, like, I was like, okay. And then we get on the date, and he's, like, being a little awkward. He's like, oh, you're staring at my hands. Like, I don't know if he was nervous or insecure or what, but he was like projecting his nervousness onto me, and it was making me kind of uncomfortable, because he was like, oh, like, you're staring at me. And I'm like, I'm not staring at you, I'm just looking at you. Like, it was so weird. And then, like, I asked him about, we were at an Italian restaurant. So I asked him, like, oh, have you ever been to Italy? He was like, no. And I think I should have kind of gotten the cue, maybe, because when I met him, I was thinking, he said he was a doctor. So I was like, okay, well, that sounds good. And then when I talked to him on the phone, he said that he's in the healthcare business. So I'm like, okay, that's good too. I think that people in that business usually make money. So I was like, okay. But when I first met him, he told me that I look like I have a trust fund. And I was just like, okay. I took it as a compliment. I was like, okay. Didn't think anything of it. And then we went on the date, and, like, he acted like he had literally never been to North Park before. So I was like, okay, this is weird. Maybe he's thinking I'm bougie. And then we get on the date, and he thinks I'm, like, staring at, like, he's feeling, like, insecure. So I'm like, this is weird. And then I asked him if he'd ever been to Italy, and he was acting, like, weird about that. Like, no, I haven't been anywhere. No. I don't know. It was awkward. And then the person takes our order. So I'm sitting there, and then he looks at me. He's like, okay, talk. And I was immediately offended, because, like, first of all, don't tell me to do anything ever. I don't even know you. Talk. Like, talk about what? And like I said, like, I believe that a man should hold a container on the date. So why would I be the one to have to initiate conversations? Like, what? And he was like, what did he say? He's like, ask me a question. Like, is there anything you want to know? Like, I don't want to initiate all the conversation. And I was like, it's a red flag. And that's how I knew we were never going to go on a date again. But I was like, whatever. I might as well make the best of this date. Like, whatever. So then I told him that I didn't like that he said that. We talked about it. Life goes on. And I think I brought up a conversation. And we start talking and all this stuff. Yeah. And I let it go, like the earlier thing. It was no big deal. And then we were chit-chatting, having a blast. Everything was cool. But, oh, and then we start talking about, I think, like, male-female friendships. And I told him I don't have any male friends. And he was like, what? You don't have any male friends? Like, most single people have a lot of friends of the other gender. And he's like, I have a lot of female friends and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, like, that's fine. And then he was talking about, like, oh, I think I'm the one who asked. I was like, so who pays, like, if you hang out with a female friend? He's like, obviously, if it's a date, like, the man pays. But if I'm just hanging out with a female friend, then I don't pay. And I know that most men feel that way. And then I asked him, and I know you guys are like, why are you guys having this conversation? But I think it's because I knew I wasn't going to go on another date with him. And I was just curious, because I could tell this was like a very liberal-minded man. That's why he wanted me to pick the restaurant. That's why he wanted me to initiate the conversation. That's why he has female friends. Like, we were just not on the same page at all. And I don't like dating liberal men who think that, like, gender roles don't matter and women can be independent and men and women can be friends. Like, clearly your testosterone levels are low. And even the way he spoke, like, even everything was just, like, very liberal and modern. And I don't like that. Like, I have a garden. Like, what does that mean? It means a lot. It means a lot. Like, I'm not with all this new age stuff. He probably also thinks that people should do, like, gender reversals. Like, I don't know. So he was talking about how, like, men and women can be friends. Where was I going with this? And I told him I don't have any male friends. Oh, so then I asked him who pays. And he was like, I don't pay for my female friends. So then I asked him, like, okay, so then why, like, what would be the point of having a male friend? Like, you can date a potential suitor who's going to invest in you and treat you and possibly be your soulmate. Like, why would you take time out of your life to just hang out with a man as friends and pay for yourself? Like, that doesn't make sense. So then he was like, oh, well, I guess it just, he's like, I've gotten friends jobs before and you would do it just for the same reason that you would have any friend. Like, why do you have any friends? I'm like, well, no, because you can't have the same friendship with a man that you can have with a woman. Like, with my female friends, like, literally we share everything. Like, we put each other on to, like, beautiful things. We can actually, like, help each other to get a better partner and life mate, like someone who we can have our kids with. We have slumber parties. Like, we can talk about everything. Like, it's totally and completely different. Like, when you have a male friend, especially one who's not even paying for you, like, to me, it's a waste of time. Like, and the point that I kept reiterating to him is, like, I've had male friends before, but once one of us gets into a relationship, we're not friends anymore. So it's a very poor investment to be investing a lot of time and resources into a temporary friend. Like, this is not your lifetime friend, because once you guys get in a relationship, you're not friends anymore. And he was disagreeing with that. He's like, I think you just see it too black and white, and I'm just, like, a lot more fluid in my relationships. I'm like, exactly. Like, you sound very fluid in your relationships. Like, it just wasn't making sense. So I just want to come on and share that dating experience. I'm not going to be dating with him again. It's funny because before the date, I made a video about how, like, I'm no longer entertaining people who I just don't feel like show up as my husband. This guy was a really cool guy. We actually could probably be friends in some world because we had, like, really fun, stimulating conversation or whatever, but definitely he's not my husband. Like, he doesn't have the mindset of someone who I would want to raise kids with. He doesn't have the mindset of someone who, anything like that. But he is a really cool, interesting guy, and I'm glad I went on the date. I had a lot of fun. Of course, he did treat me. He was a perfect gentleman. But my recommendation would be for women like me to date conservative-minded men. And had I done my due diligence, I could have vetted him before, and I could have known that and then not even wasted my time and came on this date. But honestly, like, I don't think it was a waste of time. Like, I had fun. He let me pick the restaurant, so we came to, like, one of my favorite restaurants, and he paid, and it was great. So it wasn't necessarily a waste of time, but we will not be going out again. Peace. Love you guys. Be beautiful. Be blessed.